Hello. Thank you for your continuous support, this means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. Now, let's dive into the details of today's story. Hi, I'm Sarah. Today going to read you the story of Rita, which is titled like this. I called my parents to tell them my husband died in an accident and I was in the hospital. We're not coming. Your sister is having a promotion party. A month later, they showed up to demand half of $1 million insurance. Well, let's go. My name is Rita and I'm 29. I was married to my husband Jake for 5 amazing years. We met in college. He was studying engineering and I was doing accounting. We got married right after graduation. Jake got a job at construction company and I started working at a small accounting firm downtown. We bought this cute little house with a white picket fence. Yeah, I know it sounds cheesy, but we loved it. Jake spent every weekend fixing something or planting stuff in the yard. He was always covered in dirt or paint, but he was so happy doing it. We've been talking about having kids lately. Jake really wanted to be a dad. He'd already picked out names and everything. Rita, we're going to have the cutest kids, he'd say while we were watching TV. They'll have your brains and hopefully my height. I wasn't in a huge rush, but seeing how excited he got made me excited, too. Anyway, last month we went to visit Jake's college friend, Mike, who lived 2 hours away. Mike just had a baby, and Jake was so excited to meet the kid. We had a great time. Jake spent the whole afternoon holding baby Tommy and asking Mike a million questions about being a dad. The drive back started fine. We were talking about maybe visiting Mike again soon, and Jake was joking about how he'd be a better dad than Mike because he'd teach our kids to throw a football properly. It had rained really hard earlier that day, and the roads were still wet, but Jake was being careful. We were almost home when we hit the sharp curve. Jake slowed down like he always did. He was such a careful driver. But out of nowhere, this car came flying around the bend in our lane. Jake yanked the wheel hard to avoid a head-on collision. I remember screaming. I remember the sound of metal hitting metal. The other car slammed right into Jake's side of our car. Everything went crazy after that. Our car flipped over and I felt a spinning. Then we hit something. I found out later it was a telephone pole. After that, nothing, just black. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. Everything hurt. My head was pounding and my left arm in a cast. There were bandages all over me. A nurse came over when she saw I was awake. Mrs. Peterson, how are you feeling? Where's Jake? That was the first thing I asked. The nurse got this look on her face and called for the doctor. Dar. Williams came in a few minutes later. He was this older guy with gray hair and he looked really serious. Mrs. Peterson, I'm so sorry. Your husband didn't survive the accident. He died instantly from the impact. I think started screaming again. I don't really remember much after that except crying until I couldn't breathe. They had to sedate me. When I woke up again, Dr. Williams explained my injuries. Broken arm, 3 cracked ribs, concussion, lots of cuts and bruises. You're very lucky, he said. It could have been much worse. Lucky, right? The police came to talk me the next day. The other driver was drunk, completely wasted at 3:00 p.m. on a Sunday. He ran right into us and kept going for another mile before he crashed into a tree. He survived with minor injuries while my husband was dead. I spent that whole day in a fog, barely talking to anyone. Nurses would come check on me, and I'd just nod or shake my head. The grief counselor tried to talk me, but I couldn't focus on anything she was saying. All I could think about was how Jake would never get to be the dad he wanted to be so badly. The next day, I finally got up the courage to call my parents. I knew I had to tell them what happened, and I really needed their help. My mom, Carol, answered the phone, but she sounded distracted, like was doing something else. Hi, Mom. It's Rita. Oh, hi, honey. What's up? I'm kind of busy right now. I took a deep breath. Mom, Jake, and I were in a car accident. He didn't make it. Jake's dead. There was silence for a few seconds. Then she said, "Oh, Rita, that's terrible. We're so sorry." That was it. Just "we're so sorry." Like I told her our cat died or something. Mom, I'm in the hospital and I can't do this alone. I need you and Dad to come help me plan Jake's funeral. I can barely walk right now and I don't know how to organize everything. Well, Rita, that's really difficult timing. Emma just got promoted at work and we're throwing her a big party this weekend. We've been planning it for weeks. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, my husband is dead. I need help with his funeral. I understand that, Rita, but Emma's worked so hard for this promotion. And doesn't Jake have parents and his sister, Linda? They should be the ones handling this anyway. And then she hung up just like that. I stared at the phone for probably 10 minutes trying to understand what just happened. My husband was dead and my parents were more worried about my sister's work party than helping me bury him. An hour later, Jake's parents, Dawn and Marie, showed up with his sister, Linda. I'd always gotten along great with Jake's family. They were nothing like mine. They actually cared about each other. We all cried together when they walked into my hospital room. Dawn hugged me carefully because of my injuries and said, "Rita, we're going to get through this together." Marie was crying, but she held my hand and said, "Jake loved you so much. He talked about you all the time." Linda brought me some of my clothes from home and helped me wash my hair in the hospital sink. "Don't worry about anything," she said. "We, LL take care of all the funeral arrangements. You just focus on getting better." I didn't tell them what my parents had said. I was too embarrassed. Here were Jake's parents, devastated by losing their son, and they were taking care of everything while my own parents couldn't be bothered to help. After they left, I lay in that hospital bed thinking about my family. There had always been this pattern with Emma getting special treatment, but this was different. This was my husband's death, and they acted like it was an inconvenience. That night in the hospital, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about my family and how they'd always treated Emma differently. It wasn't just this one phone call. It was years and years of this garbage. When we were kids, Emma was always getting into trouble at school. She'd skip classes, talk back to teachers, turn in assignments late. But when the school called home, my parents would defend her. "Emma's just bored because the work is too easy." My mom would say, "The teachers don't understand her creative mind." Meanwhile, I was getting perfect attendance awards and honor roll certificates. When I brought them home, my dad would just say "good job" and stick them on the fridge for maybe a week before they got buried under grocery lists and takeout menus. In high school, Emma barely passed her classes while I was in AP everything. When college applications came around, my parents hired a private counselor for Emma to help her get into schools. For me, Rita's smart. She'll figure it out herself. Emma ended up at some expensive private college that my parents paid for completely. I got into a better school on a full scholarship, but they acted like Emma was the bigger success because her school had character or whatever that meant. When Emma dropped out junior year to find herself, my parents supported her decision and let live at home rent-free for 2 years. When I graduated with honors and got my first job, they asked when I was moving out because they wanted to turn my room into a craft space for Emma. Even at my wedding, it was all about Emma. She showed up late to the ceremony because she was having a bad hair day. During the reception, she got drunk and made this long toast about how she was so proud of me for finally finding someone who could put up with me. Jake was pissed, but I told him to let it go because that was just how my family was. The worst part was how they always made excuses for her behavior. When Emma got fired from her first 3 jobs, it was because her bosses didn't appreciate innovative ideas. When she crashed Dad's car while texting and driving, it was because the other driver should have been more careful. When she maxed out 2 credit cards on clothes and spa treatments, it was because she deserved to treat herself after all her hard work. And now, when I needed them most, they were too busy celebrating Emma's promotion to help me bury my husband. The next few days in the hospital passed in a blur. Jake's family came to visit every day. They brought me food, magazines, and updates on the funeral planning. Dawn and Marie were handling everything: the funeral home, church, the flowers, reception. Afterward, Linda helped me pick out clothes for the funeral since I couldn't go shopping myself. She even brought me makeup and offered to do my hair. "Jake would want you to look beautiful," she said. He was always bragging about how gorgeous his wife was. 3 days before the funeral, I decided to give my family one more chance. I sent a text to my mom with all the details: the date, time, location, everything. I wrote, "Jake's funeral is Thursday at 2:00 p.m. St. Mary's Church on Oak Street. I really hope you can be there. I need my family." The response came back 2 hours later. "Rita, we're leaving for Emma's bonus trip tomorrow. She booked us all a week in Mexico with her promotion bonus. We can't cancel now. Emma worked so hard for this and she deserves to celebrate. Sorry, we'll miss it." A bonus trip to Mexico while I was burying my husband. Immediately called Emma. She answered on the first ring, sounding cheerful and excited. "Rita, Mom told me about Jake. That's so sad. But guess what? I'm taking everyone to Cancun. My company gave me this huge bonus and I wanted to do something special for the family. Emma, Jake's funeral is Thursday. Can't you postpone the trip by a few days?" Her voice got cold immediately. "Rita, I'm not changing my plans. People die all the time. That's just life. But I don't get promoted very often and I want to celebrate with Mom and Dad. They're so proud of me. Emma, this is my husband we're talking about, your brother-in-law. Look, I barely knew Jake anyway. And it's not like postponing our trip is going to bring him back from the dead. Stop being so dramatic." I hung up on her. I actually threw my phone across the hospital room and it hit the wall. That's when it really hit me. My family didn't care about me at all. They never had. I was just this person who existed to make them feel better about themselves by comparison. Good grades, stable job, happy marriage. I was the responsible one so they could excuse Emma's behavior. But when I actually needed them, when my world fell apart, they couldn't even pretend to care. The funeral was on a rainy Thursday morning. The hospital gave me a wheelchair because I still couldn't walk very well. Jake's family picked me up and drove to the church. St. Mary's was packed with people. Jake's coworkers, our friends, neighbors, extended family. Everyone loved Jake. He was the kind of guy who remembered your birthday and helped you move furniture without being asked. I kept looking toward the back of the church, hoping maybe my parents had changed their minds and come anyway, but they never showed up. After the service at the cemetery, Linda wheeled me up close to the casket. Dawn and Marie stood on either side of me as they lowered Jake into the ground. That's when Linda quietly asked, "Rita, where's your family? We thought they'd be here." I had to tell them the truth. They went on vacation to Mexico. Emma got promoted and they didn't want to miss her celebration trip. Dawn and Marie just looked at each other. Linda shook her head and said, "Rita, honey, your family has always been a little strange, but this is just wrong." After the funeral, I spent another week in the hospital recovering. The doctors wanted to make sure my concussion was healing properly and that I could walk without falling over. Jake's family visited me every single day. They brought me books, helped me with physical therapy exercises, and just sat with me when I didn't want to talk. When I finally got discharged, Dawn and Marie drove me home. Walking into our house without Jake was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Everything was exactly how we'd left it before going to visit Mike. Jake's coffee mug was still in the sink. His work boots were by the front door. There were still notes on the fridge and his handwriting about things we needed to buy at the grocery store. Linda helped me go through Jake's clothes and personal stuff. We donated most of it, but I kept his favorite flannel shirt and his wedding ring. Dawn helped me figure out all the paperwork I needed to handle. Insurance claims, changing accounts from joint to single, all that boring stuff that nobody prepares you for when your spouse dies. The biggest shock came when I met with Jake's lawyer, Mr. Davidson. He was this older guy who'd helped Jake set up our wills and handle the house purchase. I expected maybe some small life insurance policy and Jake's half of our savings account. Mrs. Peterson, Mr. Davidson said, spreading papers across his desk. Your husband was very thorough with his estate planning. You inherit everything, the house, savings accounts, his retirement funds, everything. That part one expected, but then he kept talking. Additionally, your husband had a substantial life insurance policy through his employer that he increased several times over the years. The current value is $1 million and you are the sole beneficiary. I almost fell out of my chair. $1 million? Are you serious? Yes, ma'am. Your husband was very concerned about making sure you'd be financially secure if anything happened to him. He also has a smaller policy worth $50,000 that will cover funeral expenses. I walked out of that lawyer's office in complete shock. Jake had never mentioned the exact amount of his life insurance. I knew he had some through work, but $1 million, that was more money than I'd ever imagined having. But you know what? I would have given every penny of it to have Jake back. Money doesn't mean anything when the person you love most is gone. I took another 2 weeks off work to get my head together, then went back to the accounting firm. My boss was really understanding and let me ease back into things slowly. Work actually helped because it gave me something to focus on besides the empty house and how quiet everything was without Jake. For about a month, things were peaceful. I was grieving, but I was starting to figure out how to live alone. Jake's family checked on me regularly. I was seeing a grief counselor. I was taking things one day at a time. Then one Saturday afternoon, everything changed. I was sitting in the living room reading when I heard cars pull into my driveway. I looked out the window and saw my parents' sedan Emma's SUV. My stomach dropped immediately. They knocked on the door and I let them in. Rita, honey, my mom said, giving me this fake hug. How are you doing? We've been so worried about you. My dad was looking around the house with this weird expression like he was seeing it for the first time. Emma was doing the same thing, walking around and touching stuff. She picked up one of Jake's photography awards and said, "Wow, this house is really nice. You're so lucky to have all this space. What do you want?" I asked. Didn't bother being polite. My mom sat down on the couch and patted the cushion next to her. "Can't we just visit our daughter? We wanted to check on you and see how you're coping with your loss." My loss? I stared at her. You mean Jake's death? The funeral you skipped to go Mexico? They all got quiet for a second. Then Emma spoke up. Rita, we were in shock about Jake. We didn't know how to react. That's why we took the trip. We needed time to process everything. Complete, and we all knew it. What do you really want? I asked again. My parents looked at each other. Then my mom cleared her throat. Well, Rita, we heard from the Johnsons that you received a large insurance settlement from Jake's death. The Johnsons were family friends who lived down the street from my parents. I'd mentioned the insurance to Mrs. Johnson when she called to check on me. We thought, my mom continued, that maybe you could help Emma out. She's been looking at apartments and she needs money for a down payment. She just need maybe half of that to buy a really nice place. Half of $1 million. She wanted half of my dead husband's life insurance money to buy herself an apartment. My dad finally spoke up. Rita, Emma's worked really hard for her promotion. She deserves to have a nice place to live and you have more than enough money for both of you. I looked at these 3 people sitting in my living room. The living room where Jake and I had planned our future, where we'd talked about having kids, where I now sat alone every night, and I realized didn't know them at all. Get out, I said. Rita, don't be selfish, my mom said. Emma is your sister. Get out of my house, I screamed. They all jumped up. Emma grabbed her purse and said, Rita, you're being completely unreasonable. We're family and helps each other. Where was my family when I needed help planning Jake's funeral? I asked. Where was my family when I was in the hospital? You only care about me now because you think I have money you can take. After they left, I sat on my couch and cried for 2 hours straight. Not because I was sad, but because I was so angry. Didn't know what else to do. I thought that confrontation would be the end of it. I figured my family would be embarrassed and leave me alone. Boy, was I wrong. The phone call started the next day. My mom called 6 times before I finally answered. Rita, we need to talk about this rationally, she said. Emma really needs that money and you're being stubborn. I hung up on her. Then Emma called. Rita, I can't believe you're acting like this. I'm your sister and I've never asked you for anything before. That was such a lie. Emma had borrowed money from me countless times over the years and never paid any of it back. I hung up on her, too. Then my dad called and left this long voicemail about how disappointed he was in Mike's selfish behavior and how Jake would be ashamed of how I was treating family. That voicemail made me so angry I blocked all their phone numbers. But they didn't give up. They started texting me from other people's phones. My Aunt Linda, not Jake's sister, my dad's sister, sent me messages saying I should reconsider my position and think about what's really important. When I didn't respond to any of the texts, my mom decided to take things public. She posted this long sob story on Facebook about how her daughter had come into money but was refusing to help family during difficult times. She didn't mention Jake's death or the funeral they'd skipped or why I'd gotten the money in the first place. She just made it sound like I'd won the lottery and was being greedy. It's so hard when your own child turns their back on family, she wrote. We raised Rita to be better than this, but grief can make people do terrible things. Please pray for our family during this difficult time. The comments started pouring in. My cousins, family, friends, people from my parents' church, all saying how disappointed they were in me and how I should do the right thing and help Emma. I watched this happen for 2 days, getting angrier and angrier. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Wrote my own Facebook post. I laid out everything. How my parents had refused to help with Jake's funeral, how they'd gone to Mexico instead of being there for me, how they'd only contacted me once they found out about the insurance money, and how they demanded half of it for Emma's apartment. I included screenshots of text messages where my mom had said they were too busy for Jake's funeral. And where Emma had said, people die all the time, and it was no reason to give up small joys. I posted screenshots of voicemails where they'd called me selfish for not giving Emma money, and messages where they'd said Jake would be ashamed of me. The response was immediate and brutal. People were shocked. Comments started pouring in, but this time they were defending me. I can't believe they skipped your husband's funeral for a vacation. Asking for $500,000 from grieving widow is disgusting. Your family should be ashamed of themselves. You don't owe them anything, Rita. They showed their true colors. My mom's original post got deleted pretty quickly, but screenshots of mine were getting shared all over town. Within a week, everyone knew exactly what had happened. 2 weeks later, I got an email from my mom. Not a call or text, but a formal email like she was writing to a business. Rita, your public display has embarrassed this family beyond repair. Your father and I are disgusted by your greed and willingness to air private family matters on social media. Effective immediately, we are cutting all ties with you. You are no longer welcome in our home, and we will not be contacting you again. We hope you're happy with your choice to value money over family. Don't expect us at your deathbed, Mother. The irony was incredible. They were cutting ties with me because I valued money over family. They were the ones who'd only contacted me because of money. They were the ones who'd missed my husband's funeral for a vacation. But you know what? I felt relieved. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to worry about disappointing them or not being good enough compared to Emma. I was free. Meanwhile, Jake's family continued being amazing. When I told them about the Facebook drama and the email, Marie just shook her head and said, "Honey, you're better off without people like that in your life." That's when I made a decision that felt right in my heart. On Thanksgiving, I invited Jake's family over for dinner. I cooked Jake's favorite meal, turkey with his mom's stuffing recipe and the green bean casserole he always requested. After dinner, I had something important to tell them. I've been thinking a lot about Jake's life insurance money. I said, I know Jake would want his family to be taken care of. I want to give you half of it, $500,000. They were all shocked. Marie started crying immediately. Rita, we can't accept that. Don said, that money is yours. Jake wanted you to have it. Jake would absolutely approve of this. I said he loved you all so much and he'd want to know you were financially secure. Please take it. It took some convincing, but they finally agreed. We set up the transfer through the lawyer the next week. That was 6 months ago. I'm doing okay now. I still miss Jake every single day, but I'm learning how to be alone without being lonely. I kept my job because I like staying busy and I've been seeing my grief counselor regularly. I live quietly in the house Jake and I bought together. I'm not ready to date anyone yet. Maybe someday, but not now. I have enough money to be comfortable for the rest of my life. And more importantly, I have people who actually care about me. I haven't heard from my parents or Emma since that email. Sometimes I wonder if Emma ever got her apartment, but honestly, I don't really care anymore. Jake's family has become my real family. We have dinner together every Sunday and they include me in all their holidays and celebrations. Linda calls me her sister-in-law and means it. Don Marie treat me like their own daughter, the way parents should treat their children. I finally understand what real family looks like and it has nothing to do with blood.